I know the Zoom stuff. They made quite a few. The H Zoom or something like that back in the day. Did you just drink out of my cup?
No, I didn't. I did not do that. It was almost. I didn't do that. Where's this from? What brewery? What are you? Tastes really good.
Oh, dude, it's my favorite beer of all time. I feel like I've given you one before. I wanted to elevate this broadcast.
Yeah, you really are. You're actually the first real professional. No, I take that back. Everyone.
It seems like you had some other professionals.
Yeah. Jared was awesome. He's a movie filmmaker. He's making a movie about pickleball. It's like a mockumentary.
Is that why? That's why there's the pickleball.
Yeah. So when you're talking to these guys,
I was like, what kind of advertisers do you got? Like they don't ever score a point. It just goes back and forth and back and forth. It's like, how fucking boring of a sport can you have?
It's a mockumentary, and think of like Spinal Tap meets pickleball.
Okay.
He has all those characters. And let me grab some headphones to make sure you sound good.
Cool. Soon?
Yeah, I'm going to go tomorrow to Home Depot to get that taken care of.
Nice.
And today, I went there to get some extra lights.
Okay.
How was your day? I know we usually start with mine, but...
We should. Yeah.
It was kind of frustrating because my bitch of a wife... No, I'm kidding. She kept the shed keys because we lock our shed because apparently she thinks our tens of dollars worth of...
Cheers, man.
Cheers. Thank you for being on here.
Mm-hmm.
She thinks our tens of dollars worth of lawn equipment is worth locking the shed. Now, I could see if we go away for a long time, we should lock it. But when I'm going back and forth, and at first I thought I lost the keys, so I was just blaming myself. And then I finally gave up and was like, hey, Lauren, where's the keys? And she goes, oh, they're in my fanny pack. And I immediately reverted to my dad. I was like, well, how the hell am I supposed to know that? Why aren't they on the key place where we put all of our keys just in case we need them? That's what I said in my head.
Did you hear the whole everything has a place and there's a place for everything speech?
No, not yet. I thought she's an adult, but we're going to get to that point if this keeps on going. So,
okay.
But yeah, that was pretty much the worst part of my day. Now, this episode's also sponsored by your law firm, which is very hard to market for because you're just looking for murderers,
rapists. You're run of the mill, otherwise good intended people.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, that's really hard to market.
No, I mean, I also do DWIs, the common man crimes.
Sure, blue collar crimes.
Yeah, assaults, domestic violence, things like that. When your lady, has lost your keys and you give up on morals and otherwise
and revert to the good old days. No, that's bad. I'll edit that part out. But no, how was your day? Seriously, what did you do today? How long were you in court?
You didn't need to check the levels.
I did. Yeah.
Oh, you did. Okay. No, it was good. I actually had a meeting with the elected DA here in Austin today, talking about discovery issues that they have, and that we, our defense bar sees. I'm on the board of the Austin Criminal Defense Lawyers, so I used to be the president a couple of years ago. I think you knew that.
Yeah, I did.
Still working with them, still working on policy issues, kind of behind the scenes, really just bringing the problems to the stakeholders' attentions and trying to get movement on things that matter and help everybody. And discovery tends to be a problem because you have discovery is evidence.
Don't worry, it's an Amazon purchase.
Yeah. Okay. So, no, discovery is evidence, otherwise known as like the items or materials or reports that are handed over in a criminal matter or any kind of legal matter.
Mm-hmm.
And that evidence oftentimes comes from law enforcement agencies, which are separate and apart from the prosecuting agency. Meaning, for instance, in Austin, you have a municipal mayor and council folks that appoint a chief of police, and that agency itself has its own internal rules and policies and all of that, and how they then disseminate information to a prosecuting agency is it's different from agency to agency. So the sheriff's office is going to be different than Austin PD. Leander is going to be different than Cedar Park. That kind of thing.
Man, that's tough to figure out and keep everything consistent.
Well, it is. And the worst part about bureaucracy is the government tends to go to the lowest bidder. And so each agency has some kind of, individual proprietary system that's hard to weave into the existing systems of the prosecuting agencies. And then they have to disseminate it to the defense attorneys somehow, some way. And making sure that gets done timely is really problematic, because the last thing you want is to, be charged with a crime, and be on waiting for your day in court for like a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. And then right before trial, they dump hundreds, if not thousands of documents, the day before trial, and are like, are you ready to go? And nobody is situated well enough to review that. Let alone make sure there isn't anything that could like exonerate somebody in that.
Has that happened to you, like last minute?
Oh, it happens. It happens all the time. It really is. It's an epidemic. And when you think about discovery and evidence in a criminal case, back in the day, it used to be just like a witness statement or an offense report. And even then, they used to, when I first started as prosecutor, we used to hold that material in a file inside the prosecuting office, and the defense attorney had to come to us to review the offense report. And you might have a custodial interview on video. You might have some medical records, but otherwise it's just an offense report. And then with the advent of video and body-worn cameras and cell phones, and the data keeps getting richer and richer and bigger, and you start, we have more progressive policies in place to giving the discovery over, giving a copy to defense counsel so they have it to investigate on their own without having to, take their shoes off and walk into a prosecuting office. When you have all that information, it's so rich, it's so vast, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, to say the least.
And it's even more overwhelming when you don't get it on the front end of your case, but instead 2 years later on the eve of trial. And we call it, there's a colloquial term, we call that data dumping. You get data dumped, and then they want you to sift through it, like finding a needle in a haystack for anything that might be helpful to your client.
Yeah.
And it's really, really a problem.
$1 million question. How do you fix that problem?
I mean, you meet with the stakeholders. That's the thing. You got to meet with the stakeholders. You have to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that they see the problems the way you see them. And in some jurisdictions, that can be really difficult, because in more progressive areas, people do see the value of due process and constitutional rights, and others not so much. You really have to fight to get basic discovery rights in some jurisdictions. In Central Texas, I would consider it relatively progressive. After Michael Morton, his exoneration, a little over a decade ago.
Who is Michael Morton?
Michael Morton, he was a gentleman who was accused, arrested, and convicted of murdering his wife in Williamson County, which is just north of Austin. And he served 25 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. He was ultimately exonerated through DNA evidence. A guy named Norwood was ultimately identified and convicted of the murder of his wife. It was a very sad story, because his son at the time was, very young, said, he witnessed a monster murdering his mommy.
Right.
And, the police sort of withheld information from the defense in that. And they also fought tooth and nail to not have evidence analyzed through the crime lab.
Why would they withhold that evidence? Is it because they don't want, they're like, oh, we have the guy right here. This evidence that we bring into court, well, that's going to kind of just make this court case go longer.
I mean, at least in as much as you asked the question, I think of it in two different ways. One is you can never get in the mind of a prosecutor and why they make a decision, because oftentimes they really believe in what they're doing, and I think for the most part have good intentions, and they think that they have the right person. Now, there are poor decisions that get made when you decide to withhold evidence that could be mitigating or exculpatory to a defendant, and that's obviously very bad, and we have laws in place now to protect defendants against that. But it still happens, and it happens more frequent than you think. The problem I think that the court system as a whole has is that we really value finality. When somebody is convicted of a crime, right, overturning that conviction means you've overturned the entire due process that went on pre-trial, the due process that more than likely went on during the trial, right? You cross-examined witnesses, evidence was marshaled in front of a jury, the jury deliberated about it, and then the appellate courts, they really have a preference for finality. To overturn a conviction, it really requires a unique circumstance. And when you withhold exonerating or mitigating evidence, that is certainly a fundamental constitutional harm that cannot stand. And so the problem is convincing courts that finality analysis should not be put in place of just looking the other way. And a good example of that right now that's in front of, in fact, was in front of the legislature. I can't remember the guy's name. I feel terrible about it. I think it's Robertson or something. I'll have to get back with you. But I believe it is, I'll have to, I don't know the facts
That's
well
fine.
enough, but
we're not fact checking on Resolute Media. It's okay.
No, yeah, right. Thank you. But there are many instances where science has come to the forefront, whether the science is the gold standard or not. Bite mark evidence is now not looked at as favorably as it used to be. Fingerprint evidence is now not looked at as favorably as it used to be. Shaken baby syndrome, which is a sort of a hysteria that started in the 70s and 80s. And anytime you bring in harming children into the analysis, people stop listening. And say, we got to be tough on crime, but if it's against a child, we got to be way tougher on crime, and it always escalates from there. And so the science really wasn't backed by the not Socratic method. What am I trying to think of?
Hippocratic Oath?
No, the scientific method. The science wasn't actually supported by any evidence, and it instead just sort of took off. And people were convicted of crimes that they didn't commit based on bite mark evidence, based on shaken baby syndrome testimony from doctors who had no other conclusion to draw, but this baby must have been shaken. If they must have been shaken, it must have been by the parent, because the parent's the only one that was around.
Yeah.
And
that's very scary.
It really is. And so I think courts are trying to be more careful about those type of analysis these days, but you still have that desire for finality, and the courts of criminal appeals, the courts of appeal, the Court of Criminal Appeals in Texas, even the federal courts tend to look the other way, even with a recent case where the legislature subpoenaed a guy on death row and they halted his execution. But ultimately, the appellate courts, even after the prosecutors, the original defense attorneys, all these folks want to give this guy a new trial, believe that he was wrongfully convicted, the appellate courts are looking the other way for purposes of finality.
They're like, nah, bro, it's settled.
Yeah, pretty much. And they've done that so many times.
Oh my God.
They're okay executing people even when you have the original prosecutors saying, wow, we really had no idea what we were talking about, and we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And this guy, we actually believe he's not guilty.
Didn't you went to school at Sam Houston, right?
Undergrad, yeah.
And that's where they go to execute.
Yeah, when I was going to college at Sam Houston in Huntsville, Texas, I lived on the square in Huntsville, and right behind it, kind of the east side of the historic downtown in Huntsville.
There's not much.
There's not much.
Yeah.
Is the Walls unit, what they call the Walls unit, and it's red brick, 3-story high wall of brick.
Yeah.
That goes a couple blocks up and down. And, you got guards positioned up on top, and that is where death row, I guess, I never got clarity on this. I don't know if that's the place where they execute them or if that's the place where they hold them before they execute them. It's one or the other.
That's scary. But so your day was all right, huh?
Yeah, not bad.
You didn't have, so we picked up, well, all this got started was you just had meetings, right? You didn't deal with any of your actual clients or anything like that. Yeah. So it was a pretty good day.
Yeah, not bad. I mean,
it seems stress-free.
I had to go to court for, one case, but it wasn't crazy.
Now, when we first met, it was in Belize, and you told me that you were a criminal defense lawyer. Mm-hmm. And I was a bit shooketh. My first reaction was like, oh, you defend criminals. You defend murderers. You defend the baddies.
Yeah.
And then you went on, you took the time and you were patient about it to explain, like, it's not all that. So when people say, like, when you say you're a criminal defense lawyer, what's your, one, how do you gauge the reaction, and then you go into your spiel. Explain what being a criminal defense lawyer is and the purpose of it. Well,
I love when people kind of have that reaction because it affords me an opportunity to correct the record on, most people's gut reaction.
Yes. Yeah.
To because criminal defense.
All we're seeing is what's on the news, what's on, the movies that we watch. We're like, oh, this guy's an asshole. He's defending bad people. So immediately I'm going to, chalk you up to be an asshole, but you couldn't have been more nice. And well, sometimes you're kind of an asshole.
I went to lunch with my, elderly aunt, a couple of weeks ago, and she had the same reaction, which I feel like I've tried on multiple occasions to dissuade her from this, but she always says something to the effect of, how can you defend somebody like that?
Yeah.
And that's really
and I think that's a good question. Right?
It's a fair question.
Okay. It's not a good question. It's a fair question.
But I always point people to the Constitution. And if you believe in our democracy and you believe in our founding documents, the Constitution is a very thoughtful document. And it starts out, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. That phrase is riddled.
Oh, you're getting me amped up now.
It's riddled with interesting, subtext. More perfect. Something to be more perfect already is grammatically incorrect, but I think they had an intention behind saying in order to form a more perfect. Because what's more perfect than perfect? I think what they were saying is that we're striving to do better. Yeah. And in the face of the history and the experiences that they had, it kind of makes sense that justice was at the forefront. They no longer wanted to have to prove their innocence, but instead require the government to meet the burden. And when you look at the constitutional amendments, you even start with Fourth Amendment, the right to be secure in your house and in your home and your papers and documents. You have the Fifth Amendment, right to effective counsel. You have the Sixth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment. All of them, you're talking speedy trial rights and due process and all the things that are fundamental to the criminal justice process were thoughtfully written down centuries ago in our country. And notably, they really wanted the protections for people that were accused to be at the forefront of the minds of our government. And when you look at it under that light, you can see how important it is to ensure that the process is done correct, because it's easy to railroad somebody if you're just like, oh, you're a child molester. Well, easy to be like, fuck you, man. Right? Like most people's gut reaction to a child molester. I saw an article today about a guy in California who had like murdered 2 other inmates, and he was very happy about what he had done. I think it's an easy sentiment to have, but the harder truth is to ensure that making an accusation is the easy part. It's ensuring that there actually is a level of burden met of proof beyond a reasonable doubt that you have the right person, because it goes back to that finality conversation that once you say guilty, that stigma is there and may very well be life or death consequences for the people involved.
Going back to I guess the history of the Constitution, do you know how many people died because of the Boston Massacre?
I have no idea.
8 people died out of the British just opening fire on a group of individuals. Nowadays, that's like, that's just another day in America.
That's a normal school shooting.
Yeah, exactly. And it really is. I'm like, oh man, we decided to just create our own country because they murked 8 of ours. So let's go to war and define our own freedoms. I thought that was interesting. I didn't realize that until I was 37 years old, because in high school, I remember hearing about the Boston Massacre, but I don't remember mentioning that it was, the number of people that died. But when I heard, I'm like, 8, really? That's all it took? Mm-hmm. Okay. But,
yeah, I'm not sure that was the straw that broke the camel's
I know.
back.
I'm sure there was a lot of other things evolving. But when I heard that, I'm like, man, that's not a whole lot. But anyways, so you always go to the Constitution when people think of like, oh, I'm defending bad people, but then you say it's just everyone's afforded the same right, same counsel.
Yeah, what I meant to finish with there, because it really is a complex problem and complex question. It's so hard to just answer it quickly at a dinner party or anything.
It
like
is.
that.
No, it really is.
And believe me, I've tried. But the quick response is that I'm not signing off on any particular individual's conduct. I'm not saying I'm okay with whatever they're accused of. What I'm saying is that I'm holding the state accountable if they are going to convict, if they're going to take my client's liberty away. I'm going to ensure that they're held accountable to the legal standards as it applies to that case, because otherwise it really is easy to fling accusations and stop listening.
Right. And it's justified. And over the course of our friendship, I've heard so many just horror stories and just you battling day in and day out of court. I mean, it really takes some guts to go into that court every day and just get your ass handed to you. It's not only by judges, but by even your own clients who you're defending,
100%.
which blows me away. Like, these are some of the most despicable individuals in the entire world, and you're their last line of defense, the last person who gives a fuck about them. And here they are just berating you like you're not doing your job, which I'm just like, it makes me upset. It gets me amped for you, Brian.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a lot of similarities between defense attorneys and sex offenders. We both tend to get a lot of ungrateful people off. You got to cut that. That's not publishable.
You signed a waiver.
Oh, okay. Did I? No. Yeah. It really is tough. But at the end of the day, it's like we lose a lot. We lose, and perhaps rightfully so. We lose a lot. But the win is in the small wins. It's ensuring that we required the state to meet its burden, to make sure that the mitigating facts, the humanizing facts about our clients are presented in a way that really puts the focus into what is the actual right outcome and not just hanging them from the highest tree possibly. Yeah.
Did you not have Yeti cups that were inscribed with "All I do is win"? I think you should change that to we the best. Go to GJ College because you are the best.
That was, ironically, that was a gift given to me when I was a prosecutor, and it's easy to win all the time.
I bet, especially if you have your tenacity. Now, let's go back in time to when you decided that I want to go into law. What made you want to go into law or be an attorney?
I was hungry and poor, and I didn't really have any job prospects. And I had a long, hard conversation with my family at the time, saying what was I actually well situated to do. And my dad reminded me that I'm great at arguing, or at least not giving up. And
didn't you almost get arrested and you argued your way out of it? Wasn't there a story like that? Like it was something straight out of like Good Will Hunting.
So I never intended to be a lawyer. I for whatever bad reasoning, I kind of always dreamt of being Walker, Texas Ranger. Kind of the fun, adventurous, karate kicking cop in a Dodge Ram.
You've fulfilled a little bit of that since you do jujitsu.
But I probably wasn't well situated for that because I was kind of a I was a troublemaker as a kid. And when I was 18, driving around with a couple of buddies, we'd just come from a flea market where we had bought like some cool, switchblades and brass knuckles. And
butterfly knives.
We thought we were badass. Not that we were going to use this on anybody, but we had it on us. We were up to no good. We were just driving around, just talking shit and having fun. And this kid pulled up to the side of us and was revving his engine, and he ended up cutting my car off. And we drove up beside him, and we're flicking him off and yelling at him, and then we're driving ahead of him, cutting him off, and then it escalates and he cuts us off again. And as we're driving, he turns left onto another major road and goes down for about a mile. We're right on his ass, honking and flip, lights going off. Of course, we had no intention to do him any physical harm, but we were definitely, ready to talk some shit.
Yeah, you're heated.
And so we pull into this parking lot.
How old were you at this time?
I was 18 years old. We pull into this parking lot, and out of the building pours like 20 cops.
Yeah.
And there was no lights on in this parking lot, but it turned out to be the Keller Police Department that we pulled into. And the guy that we were following turned out to be the son of the chief of police.
Oh, he's one of those guys. My dad's a lawyer. He's going to throw you in jail.
He had already been on the phone with them and basically just drove us
Dad, these guys are being mean to me.
Drove us into the trap. And, the guns drawn, we get pulled out of the car, thrown down onto the concrete, handcuffed. They toss my car. And for whatever thankful reason, they did not find all these weapons that we had bought. Because we did not have them out. We were not using them.
Right.
They were stashed in a different location, presumably because we cared not to get caught with them. And we did not. Nevertheless, they wrote us several tickets and ended up letting us go after about an hour and a half of interrogating us on the side of the road. And they wrote me a ticket for driving on the wrong side of the road. It really irked me because I was like,
how can they prove that though?
That was exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I went to Barnes and Noble that I happened to be working at the time, and I bought this book, like How to Fight a Traffic Ticket. And so I read it
like for dummies, like
pretty much. Yeah. So I read it and I set my case for a jury trial. 18 years old. I picked the jury, 6 people, and I had the cops sitting outside, and the prosecutor called each cop one by one when he was done questioning them. First cop, I had a butcher block piece of paper. I said, "Hey, officer so-and-so, will you draw how I drove on the wrong side of the road?" And so he draws one way, and I had no idea what they were going to do.
Yeah.
Right. He draws this one way, and I flip it. Right. And then I'm like, "Okay, thank you." And then he calls the next cop on the ticket, and he gets up there and goes, "Yeah, he was driving on the wrong side of the road, and they were up to no good," and all this kind of stuff. And passes the witness. I get him, and I say, "Hey, officer, we get down here, and will you just draw for the jury how I drove on the wrong side?" And he draws the exact opposite thing of the other cop. I'm like, "Okay, thank you for your time." And then we go.
At this moment, you're like, "Okay, I got something here."
Oh yeah. I mean, so we close. The prosecutor makes a closing statement, and I just get up and I'm like, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, which one is it? Is it this or is it that?" "I don't know because I didn't do it." And that was it. And, they were back there for 5 minutes and came back with a not guilty, which was like, oh my God, this is awesome. And as soon as they say not guilty, I didn't know it at the time, but the chief of police is back in the audience of this trial. And he stands up and he goes, this is bullshit. And the judge is like, sir, so we can't have, would you escort him out? Would you just, there's this whole uproar. And the judge's like, son, come up here. And he's like, I'm curious. I don't know how this got here, but I'm very impressed. Were you in debate or anything like that? And I'm like, no, I'm just a dumbass kid with big balls.
I just like to argue.
And he goes, well, son, I must say I have a lot of respect for what you did here, but I have to give you this advice. Don't come back to Keller. So
fair enough.
So I tried my first jury trial when I was 18.
Oh my God. Okay. And then flash forward, you passed the bar, which was in Houston?
In Houston.
Yeah, with all your buds. Prez was there too, right?
Yep.
He's
him?
now a judge.
He is now a judge.
That is awesome,
scary.
yet very scary.
Yeah. No,
please,
it's not scary. He's great.
I get it. We say that jokingly, but please tell me he's not winning your fantasy league this year.
No, he's not.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
all right.
He is dead last.
That's too many W's for that man. Jesus.
No, we all colluded against him. There's no way he was winning this year.
Anything but him. Yeah. Okay, so you pass the bar, and then you kind of get thrown in the fire at your jurisdiction down in the valley.
Yep. I didn't even know that I was going to do criminal law. I thought I was going to do probate,
which is
like wills, trusts, estates.
Oh, that's so boring.
Like
that. Can you believe these fuckers are still alive?
Oh, they are.
We just had a freeze. Well, not freeze, but it was pretty cold weather.
You need like a zapper inside of this thing.
Well, not yet. That's next season on Pints and Professionals. We'll have a zapper. So you're become the prosecutor in the valley. A prosecutor.
Yeah. The first job I got was in Brownsville, Texas, on the border by the sea, and pretty much thrown in the deep end. I got a domestic violence docket. Tried 15 cases in the first, 10 months. And then they had some vacancies in the felony courts, district courts. And so I went and filled in. And then our boss, who ran a different district court, and her trial partner, they both went out on maternity leave at the same time. And so my boss and my court, we both reported to this other boss in district court. They're both out, and so I have to go fill in at this district court by myself. And I'm also running the second chair docket for my boss in the other court.
And this is year one, right out of passing the bar.
10 months in.
Okay.
Yeah. And so for the next...
But that's not normal, right?
No.
Okay.
No. But for the next year, it was the deep end of the pool. I was trying felony cases, and I had support, of course, but I was pretty much given rein to run a district court by myself, run their entire docket, try the cases that I wanted, and it was an amazing experience. I tried probably... I can't recall now how many felony cases I got under my belt in that short span of time.
How old were you at this point?
Oh, good God.
22, 23?
30.
30? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So 50 years ago?
Yeah. It hadn't been that long ago.
And then what got you, because I never heard this story, what got you to Austin, Texas? How did you set up your practice here?
I always knew that I wanted to come back. My family is up here. At the time I had my then wife, now ex-wife. Yeah. Her family was up here as well. We always knew that we were going to end up coming back this way. It was just a matter of when and how. And, my family lives in Wimberley, so that's Hayes County. San Marcos is where Hayes County seat is.
Maybe, well, I was going to say you're...
Texas.
A lot of people don't like you. Let's just say maybe
in Hayes County.
Maybe leave. Just don't tell
where these jurisdictions are.
Yeah, just leave that out. Just in case.
So I was offered a prosecution job here in Central Texas, which was closer to family, and really also gave me an opportunity to learn from some other really good lawyers. And so I was eager to jump on that. Yeah. And I spent the next 5 years prosecuting in Central Texas. and then moved into the natural progression is the other side of the bar, which is defense work, which is.
What did you learn about prosecution? What was the what was the takeaway from doing all of the prosecuting?
It's an awesome power. It really is. And there's nothing else. You have so many resources and you have so much power and control.
That sounds kind of scary.
It really is. And it's one of those things where looking back on it, like, there are things that I did that I would not do now, that I always think about.
I think, that's not saying that we're the same, but I think that kind of goes with any industry. You kind of fail forward and you learn not to do those mistakes again. But yeah.
Anybody who's invested in their own growth, hopefully learns from past experiences. And prosecuting, it was an amazing experience. I got to meet some amazing people, and I am really proud of the work and convictions that I was able to secure in that work. I tried almost 80 jury trials to verdict, and most of them are very serious felonies, murder, aggravated sexual assault, crimes against children. I'm very proud of that work. I met my now wife through that work she was an expert witness.
You were dipping your pen in company ink, brother.
Well,
we'll get back to that story, but
not same company.
But what did you learn from that? Like, obviously the awesome power. So I guess what I was getting at, I'm kind of giving you the answer. Did you learn how the other side works? And then when you made that transition to criminal defense, did you have that in your back pocket? Is that normal?
I always felt like I tried to keep an open mind with the other side, but no, I had no idea what they did. Now looking back at it, I had no clue what the daily struggle for defense counsel was. Because as a prosecutor, you have your own office. You come in, you sit down at your own desk. They provide you a laptop. They provide you resources and materials. I had an investigator. I had a paralegal. I had victim services coordinators. I had staff. When I left, I was actually running a division. So I had my own attorneys under me working.
And who's all funding that? Is it the government?
The government. Yep.
Okay. That's interesting.
So you have the ability to fly in witnesses. You have the ability to pay experts. You have the ability to, get a lot of stuff done.
Yeah. All at the cost of me, right. The taxpayer.
Being responsible about it.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I'm sure you're really responsible about it, Brian.
I tried. Yeah.
Now, when did you decide, hey, I want to go to the other side? I want to switch?
Well, that decision was made for me.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. How?
So I had a jury trial towards the end of my prosecution career that resulted in a witness taking the stand who was basically trying to take responsibility for a gun that was in her boyfriend's possession. And the boyfriend had been in jail for a long time. Nobody had really looked at the jail calls. I'm not sure this is a story that I necessarily want.
You could. So, okay. And if there's anything you want to say or not want to say, just say lobster.
Okay. That's
our code word.
Okay. But
I was hoping you would ask the origin of lobster.
Way of saying this, So as a prosecutor, you are working for elected officials.
Yeah.
And in Hays County, as a prosecutor, we were working for elected officials, and the area that I was working, oftentimes during the election cycle, they would flip between Democrat and Republican.
You don't say.
And so we, had two different election cycles that we had gone through that we had actually flipped a boss, and ultimately didn't really see eye to eye.
Yeah.
And so I had an opportunity to move on, and it was the logical choice to go be defense counsel, and it was quite the learning curve, because now you're responsible for yourself, you're responsible for your schedule, you're responsible for all your equipment, materials, the focus of the firm, building websites, SEO, all that advertising, all the stuff that nobody thinks about when you're like, oh, I just show up to court and argue a case. Well, prosecutors show up to court and they argue a case, whatever in front of them. But the defense attorney that walks in, he's paying bills. He's got to run a business, and then practice law. And that's one of those things I had no clue what was going on behind the scenes. And I really feel for those guys that are out there hustling, because some people are good at running a business.
Yeah.
You know, they can close contracts, right? But they're not the guy you want closing an argument in your murder trial.
No.
And there are guys that are really good at closing an argument in your murder trial, cross-examining the right witness, making sure you got the right expert, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. Those guys are just excellent litigators. That's what I would hope to believe that I am. But some of those guys are not as good at running the business as everybody else is. And you see some disparity in representation for people, and it shows sometimes.
You're like, for whatever reason, I just saw this. Like, prosecutors are like the Creed and Nickelback of rock and roll, and you're like Danzig and the punk rock scene, just like making your way through it, making it happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's very. I'd never thought. I didn't know that. I
was thinking Pantera.
Well,
walk. Dimebag Darrell. He's an original, baby.
From Texas. I get it.
Did you know
Dallas.
Dimebag Darrell was buried with Eddie Van Halen's original guitar?
I had no idea. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Instead of a copy
in Dallas,
he buried. I don't know where he is buried.
He's got to be buried in Dallas.
Instead of a copy of Van Halen's guitar, he buried the original guitar with Dimebag Darrell, because Dimebag Darrell, in his words, was an original.
Wow. Well, there you go. Okay. Never mind. There's a lot of things I have to say. So you cross over the other side. Dare I say the Rebel Alliance side. You're no longer working for the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the first case you tried under your own practice, or under the defense side?
Yeah.
How'd it go?
I won.
Oh, really? All right.
Yeah, it was a murder. The lady's name was Sunshine Charity Ellis, and she was accused of murdering her boyfriend at the time. She shot him several times with a handgun.
Registered?
Sorry?
Legal? Acquired handgun?
Legal.
Okay.
She had a daughter that lived with them. She had her issues with alcohol. He definitely had his issues with alcohol and drugs, methamphetamine in particular. And the daughter was aware of his drug addiction. So much so that she had keyed meth head into the back of his pickup truck. And that was something that was actually very important to our evidence, to show that there was a lot of issues going on at this home. In fact, the daughter testified that she kept a lighter and a hairspray by her bed just to defend herself against him in case he entered her bedroom.
That's the defense. We're just going to light up and just spray it.
Well, no, that's the
we're
daughter.
We're going to flamethrow.
That was the daughter saying how dangerous.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's your defense. Like, we're going to.
It's pretty ingenious.
Well, yeah, that's inconspicuous for sure. I would never think of that as a defense.
On the night.
Hold it closer to your mouth.
They got into an altercation. Both of them were intoxicated on that night.
Yeah.
They got into an altercation, and he pushed her down in the living room. She hit her head on some furniture, and so she removed herself from the situation, went out by the fire out in the backyard, and he continued to pursue her. In fact, I vaguely remember testimony about him just oddly being on the roof, walking around on the roof, and then walking out in the yard, and then finally was like accosting her out in the yard, and she pulled the gun and she said, "Don't come one step closer." And she started firing, and she was tiny.
Yeah.
And that was part of the evidence. She kept firing, and the trajectory of the bullets kept going up. And by the time the last shot was fired, he was shot in the back. And so the prosecutor, the main bullets, it kind of went up from the feet. She said she was shooting at his feet to get him to go away.
Yeah.
But if you think about the recoil of a weapon, it keeps going up, especially if you can't control it. You're not that strong. And so the bullets that ended up being his demise were actually in his back. And so the prosecution's theory was she shot the poor fellow in the back, and he didn't see it coming, that kind of thing. She didn't help herself in as much as when the cops arrived, she was belligerent and upset and drunk. But ultimately, the jury saw the abuse, saw all the things that was going on, and they believed that she had given fair warning for him to remove himself with the weapon.
Was there prior like police records of like, what's it called when you get for people call in because there's like a domestic disturbance? Was there any police records with that?
I mean, they definitely had their own criminal histories.
Okay. Individually or together?
Honest, Lobster, I don't recall.
Okay.
Like,
all right, fair.
Some facts you just don't.
Yeah, sure.
It's been 8 years.
Yeah.
But
you always remember your first.
The funny part about that was, Dito.
Yeah.
Dito was getting promoted to major at that time, and so I had actually booked flights. I told the judge that I had booked flights, so I had to leave on Friday at this trial.
Yeah.
And the elected judge, was like, "Oh yeah, no problem. We can do it Monday through Thursday and come back the next Monday if that's a problem." So on Monday I show up to pick the jury, and it's a visiting judge, and I explain my circumstances. My best friend's getting promoted to major in the military. It's a big deal. We've had these tickets booked forever. I'm leaving on Friday, and the judge had agreed to, if it went into Friday, she'd move it to Monday. And that judge said, "I totally understand, Mr. Erskine. Totally get it. We'll be here Friday."
Oh.
So the evidence finished on Thursday. We made the closing arguments, and Friday morning they were still deliberating. So they continued to deliberate.
The jury, that is.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got on the plane to D.C., and when I arrived in D.C., I had the pleasant surprise of my trial partner at the time calling me and telling me the jury found her not guilty.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that was your first W.
That was my first defense W.
Wow. Yeah. So in your experience of defending people, do you find any common characteristics amongst the people that you defend? Their, I don't know, the job titles or the how much they earn, if they're poor, if they're wealthy, if they're, black, white. Is there something in common that you see in all these individuals? Maybe it's an emotional characteristic.
I mean, yeah, certainly.
All of the above.
I mean, the overriding arc of the typical individual that's accused of a crime is some type of mental health issue.
Okay.
When you couple that with race and socioeconomic classes, you tend to see minorities and poor minorities. One of the fascinating issues right now that me and a couple other folks are tackling is our jury pools when people are called to do jury duty. So in a felony case,
I never respond to those. So terrible. Taking me out of my day.
Yeah. It's important for people to do that.
I get it. I know. You told me.
Really
I know.
Is. Everybody wants to know how to get out. And I try to explain how important it is. And everybody's like, but like, what do I do though? What do I really do? And honestly, if you're the person that doesn't want to do it, like there's no part of you that wants to be a part of this important, constitutional program that really helps other people. If you're really that dedicated to not wanting to do your civic duty, the one job that's the imminent importance, if that's you, to be totally honest, I don't want you on my jury pool. You're not going to pay attention.
I paid attention to the one I went to. It was over a stupid speeding ticket. Yeah. This bitch.
I mean, maybe I wouldn't pay attention to that one. I would want out of that one.
I was like, she thought she wasn't speeding. The police officer had video evidence of her speeding around this stupid 18-wheeler. She wasn't endangered. That was her argument. She was like, I just felt very scared around, going around this 18-wheeler. So I had to go 80 miles in a 65 mile per hour, speed zone. And for whatever reason, I got selected. And when I went into the jury room, I'm like, let's find this woman to the max. And the max was like $200. And all my peers are like, no, we don't have to. We can do like the minimum. I'm like, she brought us here for no fucking reason. It's $150 ticket.
I agree with you. Like,
and I was like,
you brought that on yourself.
This is stupid. This is a waste of not the officer's time. This is a waste of the judge's time. This privileged woman, I'm gonna use other words.
I think there's merit to making that decision. If you make the cog turn, like.
And I was like, we need to fine her to the max, whatever the max is. And they're like, nah, we're gonna. I'm like, all right, okay, if we're gonna do this, majority, then I want her to.
Was it a white woman?
Oh yeah, 100%. She had a fat ass ring on her left hand. I'm like, she can afford it. Yeah. But all my peers were like, no, we're going to just give her the minimum. Like, this is a waste of complete time, and I never want to ever do this again.
That's frustrating.
But that's why I'm like so against going to jury duty for stupid stuff like that.
The juries that I've talked to, and I've over 100 jury trials, the juries that I've talked to are really, when it's obvious, you end up getting hammered because they're like, why, if you made us do this, we're going to make you do that. It's an easy, logical conclusion. You try to dissuade clients away from the slam dunk cases because of that reason.
Anyways, I forgot where.
The point I was going to make is the jury pools we have in Central Texas. When you have a disproportionate amount of clients that are minorities and low socioeconomic status, you would expect that the census, for instance, in this area in Austin, would expect you would see 9% black, 4% Asian, 9% black, 24% Hispanic, 46% white, and then mixed bag, whatever's left over. Typically, if you get a felony, it's 100 jurors that are summoned and should be on each panel for any particular case. So, and 100 is a great number to use if you're going to apply those statistics, right? Because you would expect 9 black people, 24 Hispanics, 46 white folks, and a mixed bag from there. And just every single time we have one black person on our jury.
Nothing but pale faces.
For my black client, 2 Hispanics. And you're like, how does this happen over and over and over again? And so it really is a problem because when you think about the phrase a jury of your peers, right?
Yeah.
My client, the poor black guy is thinking like, well, where is my community?
Yeah.
And it's a very fair concern to raise.
All right, now I feel bad for not going to jury duty because I could have helped out a fellow brown brother.
Really, yeah, it's important.
It is important. Okay. All right, now I feel bad.
I understand everybody's desire to not want to go, but the flip side of it is I've talked to people that have like sat on my juries, and they're fascinating facts. I've told you about cases that I have that are just like, you can't make this shit up.
That's why I'm still your friend.
You cannot make this shit up. And each one is just this fascinating exposition on wild facts and how it intersects with the law and cops and experts, and every single juror that I've ever talked to has come out being like, that was an incredible experience. It may be a traumatizing experience based on the subject matter. Nevertheless, they've all been like, wow, I felt important being involved in this. I was made the better for it.
It felt like it was actually their civic duty to help this individual. Yeah, that's for my wedding. Remember that day?
I do.
I remember that day so vividly. I had to get my dad sober because you assholes got him drunk. How do you fix that? Does it start with an education thing?
No, it starts with objecting and trying to bring the disparity to the attention of the judges, disparity to the attention of the stakeholders that are involved.
What if you guys paid us more?
Oh,
because that $20 only goes so far.
It's not even $20. I think it's like $6 on the first day.
I think my paycheck was $15, if I remember correctly. It
doesn't even cover parking.
No, it doesn't. That was also the messed up thing. I'm like, I just fucking paid a full day of parking for this shit, and barely getting reimbursed.
Doesn't even cover parking. It's offensive.
But I feel like, okay, so because of the internet, there's been this wake of social justice reform. Like, you know, we're seeing the problems in our society amongst minority populations. And what I'm hearing from you is like, in order for us to kind of solve these issues is to be more involved with our civic duties, and one of them being, you know, go to jury duty. So that way we can hear these trials and see these individuals that are getting arrested and being detained or being put in prison. Mm-hmm. It seems like because of all this social awareness, that would funnel people into these systems that are quote unquote oppressive. But I don't. Do you feel like that's the case? Like more people are getting involved in?
No.
But,
no, not at all.
But that's the like.
I mean, people love true crime.
Another thing that I would think would involve people, like once they get that jury card, like, oh, this could be the murder case of the century.
Right.
Let me go figure
the
out.
United Healthcare CEO.
Oh, dude, it's hard out there for CEOs. I'm kind of scared for my life. It's very scary now.
All right.
Yeah, I was just telling Lauren last night. It seems like, given all the technology and all the face recognition software and all that stuff, they should have found him like day of, but apparently they just found him today.
I mean, it's New York. It's
yeah,
so many
that's
moving
true. Okay,
parts.
all right.
And the weather was perfect to where like wearing the face covering was a natural.
That's true.
And he wore, you know, generic tones, and
I was just hoping
there's some premeditation there.
Oh, for sure, 100%.
If it's true,
and
like having the bike situated, you know, where it was, he took a bus from Georgia where he could take a firearm into New York, whereas
so you know all the deets
into it,
and he had a silencer on too,
and it was a ghost gun, which means he
made it
parts
himself.
from another gun.
Yeah,
well, yeah. I mean, he pieced it together, and he was clearly had worked with the firearm to be able to clear the discharged round, so effortlessly. And then his getting away. I think it was thoughtful. It wasn't the end all be all. He had a manifesto on him, which I think speaks volumes to the fact that he knew eventually he would get caught.
Yeah.
When you have the technology state, you can't get far.
I mean,
it really is difficult. I knew it wasn't a professional, but it was a thoughtful individual. One of the interesting things that I've been reading about, which is, folks, I mean, glamorizing violence is not a good thing at all. It's easy to do, and it's funny.
However, some of those comments are making my roommate
thoughts and prayers
laugh.
Are not in network. I understand.
I can hear her cackle all the way from my office, and she's in the kitchen. I'm like, "What are you laughing at?" She's like, "These comments they're just." Granted, yeah, and she understands that, you know, the weight of what happened, but and she also made a point. Think of how many lives he ended because of his power, you know. Think of how many, you know, things he didn't fulfill because he just said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to save the company money, and I want to make millions.
That's so short-sighted, though, because a corporation. Well, let me
go ahead.
Let me challenge you here, because a corporation itself operates under the business judgment. Sorry, the corporation itself operates under the business judgment rule, which means make as much money as possible, right? And you're responding to shareholders. Every shareholder is pushing forward that mission.
Sure.
So why not the shareholders? Why is it this one guy in this one chair?
Because he's a representative. Because he's an easy target.
He's the head.
And sometimes you got to cut the head off the snake to make others feel fearful.
The interesting,
I don't know.
The interesting legal part of all of this, I think, is the idea of jury nullification. And this is something
Explain.
So as a litigator, if I'm picking a jury, if there's that 100 people that's in front of me, and I'm seeing if you're situated well enough to be a fair juror, you're not biased for whatever reason, you can sit on a jury. The idea of jury nullification is something that we're not allowed to discuss with this jury. But it is, in fact, a a fair and valid legal, I don't know how to describe it. Let me just put it this way. So jury nullification itself is basically saying, yes, it happened. Yes, you're guilty. But because I believe that, society norms have to change, or because I believe that there's an important social or economical or religious or whatever factor at play that overrides the necessity to find somebody guilty, the jury can go back in the back and just say not guilty. And they can nullify an otherwise valid prosecution. And there's nothing that stops a jury from doing that. The only thing that stops a jury from doing that is the fact that pretty much every jurisdiction precludes defense attorneys from educating jurors that there is, in fact, this concept called jury nullification.
Okay. But I think there's an understanding idea that our healthcare system is a for-profit system. I think...
This is more like a but also. Right?
But also, sure, whatever. I think...
Pour that terrible beer on camera.
You flipped it. You did that on purpose. So that's all you're doing, Mr. Defense Lawyer. Where I'm going with this is, yeah, it's wrong to kill individuals, but it kind of sends a message in a very bad way. But the healthcare system has progressed to a for-profit system that one individual decided to say, hey, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of you making your tens of millions of dollars.
Billions.
Well, in this case, this individual was making, I think, $10 million a year or whatever it was.
But he's saying he's shareholders in the billions.
Okay. Well, it shook them up a bit. It took them... It brought them back to being a human in my mind, because
I seriously doubt that.
Well,
he's fungible. They're going to put another person in his place. With a security detail.
But the message that was sent is, hey, you guys have been fucking us over for years. You have profited billions, trillions of dollars off of us, and we're sick and tired of it. And this guy sent a message to these guys. Now, I don't agree. Well, I don't agree with the message that he sent. I wish there was other ways he could have somehow sent that message, but he did what he did. And my immediate thought was like, what if Brian has to defend this guy? What if Brian, someone like you, has to go defend this guy?
Somebody will.
Yeah, for sure. Somebody will. And it leads me to all this question of ethics, what's right for society. Granted, you're going to argue the law. You're going to use those laws as parameters of whether this guy is guilty or not, whether he's justified. But then again, to your point, it's up to the jury to decide whether he's guilty or not. So
not only whether he's guilty or not, but also what if he's found guilty, what the appropriate punishment would be.
What is the evidence that's going to lead him to become? I don't know what has come out. Well, so you said they already found his manifesto and all
Presumably.
that shit. So
there's also some online stuff about him commenting on books. For instance, the book written by the Unabomber, where he's glorifying violent acts in place of peaceable protest.
Right.
Things like that tend to suggest that he premeditated this conduct.
So, how do you defend this guy? In your mind, in your fake courtroom?
Are you presuming he's guilty? Is that what you're saying?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm going to say he's guilty.
Okay. If you're presuming it, then you would investigate those facts. It's like a trust but verify sort of system, where you want to ensure you do an investigation. You look at all the discovery. You want to make sure all the evidence says what they say it says.
Yeah.
And if that's in fact the case, then if your conclusion is that there's a strong likelihood of being found guilty, then you want to start building what's called mitigation. And mitigation is an incredibly important part of criminal defense. A lot of people are oftentimes responsible for the criminal conduct they're accused of, but their culpability, their responsibility is sort of measured on this spectrum of, were they of one of the most fundamental things I look at in violent crime is hurt people. You ever heard that phrase?
I have not.
Think about it. Hurt people that are hurt
so
people,
mentally
hurt
whatever
people.
Yeah. Okay.
They make bad decisions. They choose poor paths in life on the foundational basis that they've been hurt themselves. When you think about it this way, that historical perspective is really important in gauging whether or not you just lock them up and throw away the key, or you look at something that's more rehabilitative, right? Sex offenders, more often than not, are individuals who have been offended against when they were younger. And it's one of the paradigms that really fucking bothers me. Because if you think about and I've prosecuted many sex crimes in my career, and I've also defended many sex crimes in my career. And I can tell you the vast majority of offenders were also victims. And it bothers me because the narrative that's spun for the victim in the particular prosecution is always, oh, you've ruined their life and we should coddle them, and because of this damage you should serve this this like really bad sentence. When that victim themselves then perpetuates a crime, we seem to just forget about all the coddling, all the hand holding, all the glove, the kid gloves that we put on in that situation, and we flip the scale over to condemnation. Mitigation is bringing forth the fact and humanizing the concepts behind the individual. And when you're able to refocus and point to the impetus of why this is occurring, you can really focus on what options are available to, one, help it not to occur again, and sometimes maybe you just can't do that. But two is like, what is the real value of throwing this person away? Do we have redemption? Do we have an ability to contribute to society? Do we have remorse? Things like that. The other one that I always think about is drug addiction. Drug addiction is one of those things where folks, what were you going to say?
No. That's another good tangent that I want to get on. Go ahead. Yeah.
When you have a drug addict, the rehab is always a great option. But the problem is they're going to relapse. And if you don't accept the fact that they are going to relapse or going to fail, then what you have is a setup for failure. What you have is, like, for instance, like you get popped with a bunch of drugs and you put them on a probation. Let's say you put them on a probation and they fuck up the probation because they violate it because they go use drugs, right? And then the judge wags their finger and the prosecutor wags their finger and the probation officer wags their finger and say, tisk, 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 you agreed not to use drugs, and here you are using drugs. And everybody who's had the experience with these folks is going, well, of course that happened. Yeah. Like it's a part of the progression through rehabilitation. You're not just going to end up being perfect. You're going to have to wrestle demons. And that rehabilitation necessitates relapse. And so you have to convince these folks, the judges, the prosecutors, the probation officers, that second, third, fourth, fifth chances are reasonable, as long as these folks aren't hurting other people.
But because of the general idea that we're set on finality, we want this person to never ever make this mistake ever again. Yeah. And therefore we're not going to give them a second chance.
Well, the other problem, really, if you think about it, is a judge and a prosecutor and a probation office are not counselors. They're not drug treatment providers.
No, they're going by the law.
They're bureaucrats.
Yeah, okay.
They're bureaucrats. They're just like, we're tired of seeing this name on our docket.
Right. We're tired of this problem. We want to be done with.
We're tired of it. Like, the only way to send a message that we don't want to see this again is send you to prison.
We're going to create the DARE program.
Just wear the shirts.
That helped.
McGruff the crime dog. You remember him?
Oh, yeah. He came to our school in La Granada Elementary, Riverside. Did he come to your school here in Texas too?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. He's like Santa. He was all over the place. He gets around. Careful with that beer holder. It's 4 cans. It could spill. It could not. You're better off on the ground, off the side. I just don't want it to spill on your nice dungarees.
Lobster.
You know the origin of lobster? No. So, I was a young lad, probably like 12, 13, and I had never had lobster before. And my brother and sister took us out to celebrate our parents' wedding anniversary. And I was telling Ed, like, hey, I kind of want to try lobster. You know, he's like, yes. He was very excited for me to try lobster, like Ed is. Yeah. He's very excited to make sure that you're having a good time. And so we get in the restaurant. I look at the price of lobster. It's like $70. It's ridiculously priced. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to do that. That's too expensive for you guys. I'll just go with the cheeseburger and I'll have a good time. And I told my brother that, and he goes, no, you got to get lobster. You're 100% going to get the lobster. I'm like, nah, Ed, it's too expensive. I'm
fearful because if cheeseburger and lobster are on the same menu.
Well, it's called Market Broiler. They were trying to cater. It was probably like off the kids' menu, the burger was. And so when it comes for me to address the waiter who is coming around to everyone to take their order, before I could even get out a word, Ed goes, he'll have the lobster. He'll have the lobster. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're going to get the lobster. And so I'm like, all right, Ed, I mean, you're paying for it, so what do I care? I was just trying to save you some dollars. And when it comes to get our entrees, I get the lobster and I bite into it and it tastes foul. It tastes rotten. It tastes gross. And he sees the look on my face and he goes, Ramon, what's wrong? And I'm like, this doesn't taste as good as I've seen it in like movies and TV shows. And he goes, all right, let me try it. And he bites into it and he's like, yeah, it's rotten almost. And I'm like, see what happens when you like push me to get something that I don't want. And so being from the family that I am, that is always hypercritical, I'm like, anytime someone tells me to do something and I just don't want to do it, I'm just like, lobster. And that stops the conversation cold. Everyone shuts up. We move on with our lives. So yeah, from now on, like, yeah. And of course, we never, given the Mejia family tradition, we never let anyone live anything down. So yeah, lobster is still a pretty powerful word in our realm. But what I was going to get at is, so the opioid epidemic was helped fulfilled by pharmaceutical companies. Mm-hmm. How?
Love me some opioids.
Yeah, who doesn't? So when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry's defense, I guess who's responsible for this? Is it the pharmaceutical industries? Is it the doctors? Is it the individuals? How do we make sure this never happens again? In your opinion?
That's a very complex
because we're arresting
problem.
Individuals that are addicted to opioids. They're acquiring them illegally.
Are you talking about like fentanyl?
Sure, fentanyl, whatever.
What I see on the streets are not necessarily like, oh, I got some Vicodin.
Right. Know? Okay. No. Okay.
Like
so
most of the time,
let me rephrase that. How do we address the issue of fentanyl and the addictive qualities to that? Like, how do we solve that issue from a lawyer standpoint?
I mean, I personally believe in the crackdown on fentanyl because of the way that it's being distributed is very reckless.
Yeah.
Certain
it's
drugs.
Not regulated, obviously.
Clearly. Certain drugs, and now even you found laces in it, in marijuana, cocaine, MDMA, and even methamphetamine itself has seen like a marked change over the years of like the compounds, because it used to be red phosphorus based and now it's something different. And the new compound there's some scientific evidence that supports that it contributes to late adult onset schizophrenia. When you have an unregulated market that dabbles in, substances that you can't really easily test for purity, you really have a huge danger to the consumer.
Sure. But if I get arrested for having fentanyl, how do you lawyer yourself out of this problem is what I'm trying to get at, because obviously the people who are facilitating the drugs to the individuals, and I think these individuals are innocent. They're not innocent. They're using a drug that is given to them from an unregulated source because of whatever issue. Maybe they're trying to solve their own. Maybe they're just trying to take the edge off of life. Life is hard. Why are we so quick to vilify the individual using the drug instead of the source? And the source could be
easy access.
Right.
The ones you
right.
touch.
The source is the fentanyl dealer or the pharmaceutical company who's making billions of dollars, who's heavily regulated, yet they sent out all these opioids into the market and got all these people addicted, and now they're flooded into the homeless population.
I mean, just like the pharmaceutical markets, the cartels themselves are multi-billion-dollar agencies, right?
Right.
When you stop a multi-million-dollar trafficking of cocaine or methamphetamine across the border, you're not even touching a percentage of the business that's affected by most of these cartels.
Right.
Maybe some of them, but not most of them.
Right.
This is they bat an eye at it. It's a volume game that they're pushing across the border. You're not going to stop that. The only thing that's tangible to most of us is the low-level street dealer who's pilfering it out to the sons and daughters of our community that end up having addiction issues and may end up dying because of that. And it's the things you can see and touch that they're oftentimes the most readily fixed.
Right. I don't, but same with the crack epidemic. Like, we were attacking the individuals who were supplying, to the community instead of attacking the root source of the problem. So why isn't the justice system maybe they are now, I don't know, but why aren't we attacking the head of the problem? Why aren't we creating rules and regulations around them?
The head of the problem is a much harder issue to wrangle
because of money,
for sure.
Yeah.
The justice, the Department of Justice federally, they only go after a small, very, very small amount of prosecutions. I mean, it's really a small amount of prosecutions that they go after. Dito is a DOJ prosecutor. He'll tell you the amount of prosecutions that they go after is, state to state, city to city. It's easy to go after the guys on the street, the drug dealers, the homeless people they sweep up that have like a gram of coke on them or less than a gram of coke on them, right? Or methamphetamine on them. There's so much of that, and so easy to prosecute, so easy to put that in jail. But the feds, they won't touch anything unless it's like kilos in volume.
Yeah.
And even then, when I was in the Valley, I've seen more drugs than I've ever seen in my life in the Valley, and the feds are like, "Oh, that's just a Tuesday,"
Just another day. I guess what I appreciate about you and respect about you is that you're not taking the easy way out in earning a living in regards to going from a prosecutor to now a criminal defense lawyer, and kind of going back to the way this country was founded. It wasn't easy to found this country. It was very hard to do. Why? Well, I know the answer. It's because we're greedy. We want to make money. Everybody wants to make money. But how do we go back to doing the hard things to correct the problems that we see in society? I guess is what I'm asking. Because you're doing a very hard job to correct the problems of society, and you're just one person. And I'm sure there's other people, around this country that are just like you. And But how do we go back to facing those hard problems and correcting those issues?
I mean, drug addiction is a really big problem, but one of the things I said early on in this is mental health. The vast majority of my clients have mental health issues, and addressing those things are very difficult. When an individual has mental health issues, there's not a whole lot of resources out there to, number one, identify what they're going through. Even if you do, the resources to treat that are very limited.
Yeah.
If they need inpatient rehabilitation, oftentimes these are people that don't have insurance,
right?
Don't have support structures or networks. Like, those are the things that need to be addressed.
Give me an ROI on why it would be beneficial to give all the money to those individuals to help correct their mental health issues.
I mean, if you
frame it that way.
If anybody's driven down Riverside or gone to the Sunshine Church on Manchac,
I used to have a gym there that I would go to. Jesus Christ!
Driven down 7th Street between Arc and the Arch and Creek in the Cave, you've seen the folks that are battling with mental health issues.
Yeah.
Under the auspice of homelessness, transients, the unhoused community, whatever progressive term you want to apply, the vast majority of those folks have documented mental health diagnoses, and their ability to get treatment, their ability to get medication is very limited. Their ability to get mail so that they can get their Social Security checks that pay for the medication, that pay for any opportunity or possibility of housing, all of that is so incredibly limited. And the time that they spend just waiting around trying to do that, idle hands with time end up, turning into drug use.
Right. But there's no, as it stands right now, there's no ROI in helping those people because they're kind of associated as a lost cause. They're not going to be beneficial to society.
I do think
but how do we sell that? Like, hey, if we help these individuals, then everything's going to get better. Like, if we put the funds into these people and we give them second and third chances, something good will change. But how do you tell that to the taxpayer? How do you sell that to the taxpayer?
It's really hard. The criminal justice system is a black hole of finance. Nobody wants to give money to a hospital for individuals who are incompetent to stand trial in a criminal case.
And why should I? Where's the ROI again?
Right. Why am I helping this person who committed a crime is what most people would say. Pick themselves up by their bootstraps,
There's always that case, but yeah, what I guess. Okay.
I do think there is an ROI. It's a really hard thing to put your finger on, like the pulse of like, how is this going to work? How does this actually benefit us? And really the NIMBY concept comes to mind, not in my backyard. Because when you put Sunshine Church on 290 in Manchac, that poor community, I used to live over there. I used to go to that Dan's and that radio all the time.
Yeah.
That poor community, the folks that are over there, some of them are in extraordinary duress. They're sleeping on the ground in the cold, defecating on themselves, using drugs and making very poor decisions, most of the time self-medicating because they have no other recourse or ability to help themselves. And we just say, oh, move them out, move them away. But all you're doing is just moving the problem from one community to another. We really need to, and I think Austin has more than any other city done a lot to try to help put people in housing. And giving a person a house really does help. Like, you get them out of the elements. You give them a place to sit down, put themselves together.
But Brian, how do I know they're not going to do drugs in this house that I provided for them?
Luckily in Austin, that's not necessarily a huge factor of keeping them in the houses. There's a lot of community partners that work with these folks and understand the concepts I was explaining earlier, that you're an addict, it's anticipated that you'll relapse. When you are assessed as having a mental health issue in the criminal justice system, at least in Travis County, they do a really good job about identifying those issues, connecting them with services, and working with them to try to keep them out of the justice system. If it's a violent offense, it presents its own problems, because that's where you really have to be very careful. But if it's drug induced, or if it's like just criminal trespass or criminal mischief, non-violent offenses, typically the movement is to try to work towards getting housing for these individuals, making sure they're plugged in with services like integral care, making sure they stay on their medication for an extended period of time. And typically the prosecution is way more amenable to those folks to dismissing those cases if they get on track with a treatment.
And I think what I also try to remind myself is that these individuals don't have a support system like we as, humans have. We have good friends that we can rely on. We have family, we have a wife, we have friends, and they don't have that. And that's what I remember walking down Rainy Street, just taking photos. And I remember a guy telling me he was going to fucking kill me if I took his photo. I'm like, man, I'm not trying to take your photo. I'm taking photos of buildings. You're not that important. But I just remember him walking me down. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to leave. And that put an imprint in my mind. Fuck this population. I don't give a shit about if they're going to tell. And that was a problem. If they're going to tell me I'm going to fucking kill you, then I associated everybody as that guy. Meanwhile, that guy was probably just having a bad day or a schizophrenic episode. And
100%.
And here I am just being like, fuck the population. I don't care.
It's easy to, in that singular interaction.
It is easy to facilitate an idea we don't need to take care of them. But
I'll tell you this. There's a difference between you having that feeling, which is a justified feeling. You be like, fuck, man, I don't want to be around this. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to.
Imagine, and I'm a guy, I can take care of myself. Imagine if a female street photographer went through that. That would probably end her career. She would not want to take another street photo.
Perhaps.
Again.
But the distinguishment I'm trying to make is that while that may have been a bad day for you, right?
Right, yeah.
Is that a reason to interject the criminal justice system into this guy's life?
Oh, God. No.
Is that a reason to lock him up for several days because he's a nuisance, right?
That would just probably make his life even worse. Well,
honestly, the couple of days in jail probably wouldn't be that bad. But what I fear in a lot of those situations, what I fear in a lot of those situations is that these guys get lost in the system. Yeah. They may not get a good lawyer. They may get a guy that, or whatever situation may arise. They may get a guy that's on vacation or whatever. They get lost and they get held for a longer period of time. They aren't treated in the jail because the jail is not a mental health hospital. They're not taking medications. They get in a fight in jail. They hurt somebody, they get more charges.
Right.
Is that really how we want to solve this problem?
Yeah. Brian, I don't have anything else to ask you on camera. Do you have anything else you want to say that's going to live forever?
I'm disappointed in your interviewing. Your questions are great. You're always a good question asker.
Thank you. I try.
But if it's Pints and Professionals,
I know, dude.
The beers have to be visible.
I know.
I like the setup. It's I'm poor, but I'm interesting.
I am not poor. Well, I am poor after this garage renovation. You know how I have couches that are coming. I bought Lovesac.
Yeah.
Are you familiar? Mm-mm. They are modular couches that the covers come off.
Really just chairs that you're calling couches? Because you just called this a couch earlier.
This is a couch. It's a ploy to get my landlord / roommate / wife to get those 37-year-old couches out of our living room.
Okay. And then they'll come in here?
So no, that's not the case. I bought the couch so that way we can chill out here, hang out, watch TV. There's going to be a TV there.
Yeah.
It's a ploy to get her to get in these couches and be like, oh yeah, these are nice. I will detach my emotional sentiment to these 37-year-old couches and we can get something new. But yeah, those are coming in 4 to 6 weeks. I paid $2,500 for a love seat. A love seat. That's fucking expensive. But I sat in them and they're worth every dollar. Okay. They have removable.
Is that still what you're going to sit in? Because it's like the nice chair and then the hot seat.
No. It's going to be
uncomfortable camping chair.
Dude, that's a comfortable chair.
Is it compared to your?
It really. You got a cell phone holder on the other side. You know, REI doesn't make a bad product, but yeah. So that is going to be coming in probably 3 to 4 weeks because I bought it 2 weeks ago. We're going to have a TV up there.
Okay. So there's improvements coming along.
There is definitely improvements. Yeah. The garage door is going to be insulated so that way our mini split can run efficiently. The bulk of it has been done. And yeah, I'm excited about what's going to happen here. Maybe I
see a soccer ball in the bag here. Is that a redemption gift for me? Or
Shut up. No, it's not. Don't worry about it. That's your Christmas present. It's going to be coming soon.
I bet. I fucking bet. I like the camera. That's a pretty dope camera. So
that's a professional camera.
Professional.
Somewhat.
I'll throw my pint on it. I thought the cameras like that only went for like 30 minutes.
No, technology has upgraded to where it can run continuously. Evolved. It has, because apparently it was a tax issue. Because if you had a camera that would run longer than, I think it was 15 minutes, this was 15 years ago, then it had to be a camcorder or called a camcorder, and therefore it had to be priced differently, and there was going to be a different tax bracket or tax associated with it. But I think they did away with that, and now these things can run for however long you have a memory card.
Are you renting this, or is this yours?
No, I bought it. It's on
Big money.
It's on layaway. No, that would mean I wouldn't. It's on a payment plan through B&H. No interest for the 12 months. That is, I think I have maybe like 6 more months to pay that off, which it's fine. But yeah, this is going to be the new studio. I'm surprised you didn't talk about that. Let's talk about that. I made that in 7th grade.
You know, it's very festive. It
is Christmas. We didn't say Merry Christmas to each other.
Merry Christmas. I won't. How dare you?
Oh, God, I hope Prez wins this somehow, miraculously wins your fucking fantasy football.
It's very
league.
Festive. I do like it. You made that?
I did.
I don't believe that part.
Well, I painted it.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Miss McComb had a mold, and we just, she did all the work, and then she popped it out of the kiln, and I just painted it. Which, it's pretty good work. That's mom.
That's made in China and painted in.
No,
Midland.
It's not made in. That was made in America. That was made in America. Which we forgot about that. How do you feel about good old businessman China? Coming back? Take 2.
Cheeto?
Yeah, Take 2.
Oh.
Are we in trouble?
The rule of law
is the rule
gone,
ending?
But Grandpa Joe did no service to the rule of law with pardoning Hunter Biden, and I'm assuming he's going to pardon.
Okay, yeah.
A couple
Talk to me
other
about
folks.
that. Talk to me about that. How does a president pardon a? We all have seen the video evidence.
Does?
Yeah. Well, I know he does, but how does that make you feel as a person who likes to defend the law? See a president pardon his son under really damning evidence of what he's done.
Damning evidence?
The laptop, the hookers, the guns, the cocaine, the crack cocaine.
What they're getting him for is tax evasion and buying a gun while he was a drug user.
Yeah, that's illegal.
It is. And you know how many people the feds actually prosecute under that law?
Not very much, but given his celebrity
Biden.
Given his celebrity status.
One guy. Hunter Biden.
But of all the
people and of all the things, Hunter Biden.
I'm just going to say, now, I'm pretty sure my dad, if he was president, he would pardon me if I was wilding out. He would just be like, well, I take that back. No. I remember having a conversation with my dad. He's like, Ramon, if you ever go to jail, I'm not going to bail you out. I'm like, fair. That's fine, Dad. And he never had to. But being a father, and imagine if you're president, are you pardoning your child under those allegations? Or are you setting an example for the Democratic Party?
I mean, it's so multifaceted. So Kash Patel is the guy that's going to be coming in as the FBI director under Trump. Kash Patel was on Steve Bannon's podcast multiple times, and this guy is just ranting and raving about how he's going to prosecute all the enemies of Trump. And he is just going, I mean, he really, go back and look. Like, the guy says some unhinged shit, and he is going off about prosecuting these folks.
Okay.
And I can see where a father would be very concerned about the fact that, quite frankly, the best thing that could have happened would be Joe Biden follows what he said he was going to do, which is not pardon his son.
Which is kind of interesting because I don't think Joe Biden knows where he's at half the time. But anyways, the fact that he has the mental fortitude
he said multiple times he wasn't going to do that. He was going to let the rule of law play out. But Kash Patel's statements, I bet, and the announcement of Kash Patel being the FBI director under Trump was the same weekend that Hunter Biden was pardoned. And they're inextricably linked. Just, you have to understand that.
Don't make me put on my tinfoil hat, Brian.
They're linked, and for good reason, because I think Kash Patel is a bit unhinged. Nevertheless, I think the best thing that could have happened is if Trump came into office and then pardoned Hunter Biden. That would have been a uniting front across the bow of all the heartache and
that would have been a peace offering
of our country.
Sure.
Now, with Hunter Biden being pardoned, you have basically given an open floodgate to Trump to pardon the January 6th insurrectionists. Which
hey man, we were just there to protest.
Oh, they had no other choice. Is that what he said? Like, what?
One of my buddies said that it was kind of dumb for the Republican Party to take the debate as early as they did, because it gave the Democratic Party enough time to facilitate a new
regime change.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think that's a good analogy.
Because if Trump debated Joe Biden in September, when it typically happens,
it would have been a landslide.
Well, it already was a landslide, but it was. I think it was dumb on both parties for them to debate that early, but no, it's weird time in politics right now, and I hope next 4 years. I don't like Joe Biden. I don't like Donald Trump, but for the love of God, I just hope they do good for our country. Like that's all I can do, right?
That's all you can ask for.
Like, I don't want World War III to happen with any president. I don't want anything bad to happen to anybody. But I want to support whatever president is up there. But it's been really hard for the past 8 years to do so.
12 years.
Yeah. 12 years now. Yeah. It's really hard for me to do so. I'm just like, all right, well, maybe we'll hold out for the next 4 years and we'll see what comes next. But the main thing that I hope that happens after this decade of just disappointment is that people are invested in local politics, because not a lot of people know who their district representative is. Not a lot of people know.
Do you think they are now?
I would hope. I did. Brian Alter is our District 5 representative. He has kind of a okay past. He was a builder, and he went bankrupt because he made a lot of bad decisions, but now he's running our district. So,
oh, good.
Yeah, exactly.
But now he's in government.
Well, so he's going to fix things.
He can print
But
money.
he does do meetings like I think every quarter at Easy Tiger off of South Lamar. So next time he has that, I want to go to that and ask him questions like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what are you about? So I hope that
should have him on the golf.
I would love to, if he would be. I mean, if I ever make it that big, maybe one day we'll have him, because podcasts did. I feel like podcasts. Let me tell
you a secret.
Go ahead, please.
A guy like Ryan Alter, doesn't have a lot on his schedule.
Okay, good. But
he can do this podcast.
He's not. His party, his people are not responding to my emails about homeless situations going on right now. Because he just
need to get in front of him.
Well, he went to Denver to find out what they're doing with the homeless population, and when I emailed him,
did he?
He did, allegedly. I checked the flight records. He flew Southwest. He was in Seaboard
to Denver.
Yeah, to figure out what was going on.
To figure out the problem.
That's what it said in the email. So
I wonder what the dinner was like at the
I'm sure it wasn't cheap, and I'm pretty sure we paid a heavy price. But I sent him an email. Hey, what did you learn from that? No response, because obviously he has people answering his emails. So next time he does have a little get together, I'm gonna go pick his brain. But
state rep or fed rep?
What do you mean?
Is he a federal?
He's our District 5 manager.
Federal representative.
Yes. Yeah.
Congress.
No. He's our District 5 here in Austin, Travis County, District 5 representative.
For
Austin.
The federal government or the state government?
For us, for the city government.
You're so confused.
I am very confused. Please enlighten me.
So when you look at government,
yes,
right, you have the federal government. Right, you have the president, you have Congress, you have senators and representatives. Federal.
Sure.
Right. In Texas, you have a governor.
Yeah.
You have state representatives.
So he's a state representative, District 5 of Austin, Texas, of Travis County.
Federal representatives have districts as well. So when
really,
you say district,
okay, learned something new. Thank you for enlightening me.
Like gerrymandering is how you run all those districts.
That's. But anyways,
and then you have city councilman, you have a mayor, and you have you have a county judge who's is not really a judge, but they're a mayor or whatever. They just call them that. And you have commissioners.
Okay.
And then you have a mayor and you have city councilmen. There's levels to the shit. So what the fuck are you talking about, Ramon?
The District 5. We're in District 5. You live miles, like thousands of miles away from me.
So he's a state representative.
Sure. In District 5.
Are you sure?
Yes. I'll look him up. I think listen, don't lure me up. This is
Lloyd Doggett is our federal representative.
Well, Lloyd.
So I know he's a state representative.
Right.
I'm just fucking with you, but I just wanted to see how much you knew.
He's District 5. That's all that matters. Anyways, he has a sketchy past, and I want to ask him about it. He went to Denver to figure out the homeless issue, and he hasn't responded to any emails.
Don't lead with, you have a sketchy past, but I'm really interested in what you have to say.
I don't plan on that, but I'm pretty sure he's used to idiots like me accosting him for shit that he didn't do.
What's your opinion on hookers? Just the tip?
Hey, if they're willing, I'm to have a pocket. No, I'm kidding. Lauren, don't watch this podcast.
Down payment or just the tip?
All right, we're done. Anyways, Brian, anything else you want to say? If you murder somebody, please contact Brian. I have his address.